Hello and welcome to the third annual Advanced Women in Security Virtual Conference. My name is Neil Sutton, and I'm the editor of the security publications at Annex Business Media. We have a great lineup of speakers planned for you this afternoon, so please join us for the entire presentation. Before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsors for today, Garda World, ASSA Abloy Opening Solutions, IDN Canada, and NBG Telecom. Without their support, events like this would not be possible. Our sponsors have on-demand sessions available on our event website, so be sure to check those out. We have three great sessions for you today. First up is our keynote address from Miriam Saeed, who is the head of risk at Visa Canada. That will be followed by our first panel discussion, addressing recruitment and retention issues in the security industry and creating an environment that is more inclusive. We'll take a 15-minute break around 2:15, and then we're back at 2:30 for our final session of the afternoon, advice from the entrepreneurs, women who lead their own security businesses. We encourage all attendees to participate in the conversation today by using the Q&A window and asking questions. We'll try to save some time at the end of each session for some audience Q&A. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker for today, Miriam Saeed. So Miriam joined Visa in August of 2021 as the head of risk for Canada. In her role, she is responsible for leading payment, risk, and fraud prevention for the Canadian payment ecosystem. She works closely with government relations and compliance teams to protect Visa. Before joining Visa, she was the head of lending products in the commercial banking group for HSBC Bank. Over her career, she has led multiple roles across commercial and retail banking globally with Standard Chartered Bank, HSBC Bank, and her most recent role at Visa. She also summited Mount Kilimanjaro in 2019 and is a graduate of McGill University. She is currently based in Toronto. So please welcome Miriam.
Thank you, Neil. So I just wanted to start by thanking you for inviting me here. I'm extremely honored and humbled to be speaking to an audience of women in security. I've spent over the years, as you just shared, I've spent my career across business lines, different business functions. I've done some credit risk operations. I've led large sales team across commercial, retail, payments, and cash management across geographies. And I'll say my one big observation is one that women are a very key facet to the success of all businesses across all businesses and functions. And while we have this huge contribution, there are a lot of roadblocks and a lot of challenges along the way. As a woman, I can firsthand share that, we're almost expected to do it all. We show up at work, we show up at home, we spin many plates all at the same time, and we do them well. And so I just wanted to congratulate everyone here who's had a career, who's making it through and breaking boundaries. And before I get into it, I wanted to share something that I'm really proud of, which is that at Visa Canada, we are a workforce made up of 58% being women. And of our leadership team, 7 out of the 14 are women. So we have 50% representation on our Canadian leadership team. And I'm very proud of that number. While that's great and we've made a fair bit of progress, I would also like to share a recent study that Osler kind of put out there in 2023 with regards to diversity on boards in Canada. And while the number is better than it was 10 years ago, it's twice of what it was 10 years ago at 26% representation across companies that disclose their board of directors. 26% is women. And that's an improvement, but there is a lot that is yet to be desired. And so I want to focus on the fact that we face as women unique challenges in terms of everything that we're doing. So we're looking after aging parents, we have homes and families that we look after. We're all learning something new, and that can be challenging. But we've also got some things that are unique to us that kind of enable us to do certain things better than the other. And I will pause here to talk about being a mother or motherhood. I think motherhood is severely underappreciated as a professional upgrade. I read a recent article that, kind of outlines this really, really well by Rebecca Coleman. And she speaks about her learning as a mother, how some of the toughest negotiations we have, some of the toughest situations that we face are as mothers. And then we kind of also build this innate sense of empathy and approachability as we go through that journey. And I think that's something that we should be proud of. And I think that's something that we should share and beam out there. As a mother of two teenage girls, and for all of you who are in the same situation as me, I feel for you. I will have to say that I have two very strong-headed girls, and the toughest negotiations I have to ever face are at my dinner table at home. And so with that, I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned over my career. I'm going to hopefully share some golden nuggets that I've collected. And while all of us have different experiences and all of us have learnings and nuggets that we've collected, I'm going to share what works for me. And I'm going to share what I think is important for myself and for other women like me in the future. So I'm going to talk about 5 things. I'm going to talk about how to be 5 things that I think that we should all think about. One is how to be authentic and the importance of being authentic. The second is to build some grit. The third is remain curious. The fourth is to have courage. And lastly, and I'm going to just give a sneak peek on this, is the man flu. And that's a phenomena that is something that I have learned over the past couple of years from my husband. So on being authentic, and I'll stay short on this piece. My learning has been that you can only be the best version of yourself, and you need to define your strengths and your weaknesses, and kind of call out your own superpower. I've seldom found success trying to be a version of something that I'm not, and frankly speaking, it's exhausting. It barely ever reaps any results. So, you be you. It's a new term. My teenagers use it for me all the time, but it is the key and the underscoring and underlying aspect to how we can propel ourselves forward. The second one is build some grit, and I'm going to spend some time on this one. Learn to be resilient. There's no doubt it's challenging to bounce back after you've had a punch. But as you think about and as you observe your leaders, you'll see that you can't always get it right. So one, you make mistakes, and two, sometimes you put an idea forward or a concept forward, and people around the table will call your baby ugly or not like your idea, so to speak. I call it people calling my baby ugly. And for both of those situations, being resilient and having passion to persevere is a key aspect. As we grow in our careers, and we find ourselves in situations where something goes wrong or something is not ideal. Think of the Titanic, where the captain was, leading the greatest ship of all times, but saw his biggest failure. And his biggest challenge, the biggest challenge of his lifetime, was to bounce back from that tragedy and make the best of whatever the situation was at that time. And so building some grit is important. The question is, how do we build and practice grit? I've had the privilege of growing up in Pakistan as a girl. And so I had to develop grit and the ability to bounce back very early. I constantly challenged the norm. I played cricket on the street. I spend my school lunch breaks playing volleyball with the boys team. There wasn't a girls team. I, so to speak, challenged every norm. I was fairly rebellious, and my teachers were not big fans of me. At large, society was not aligned with how I wanted to lead my life. And so it's fair to say that I've taken a fair bit of punches, and I've always bounced back because my purpose was bigger than and stronger than the punches I received. So that's how I learned grit. I'm trying to enforce that grit in my daughters through sports, through challenging them, through questioning their ideas, through pushing back when they feel like they've got it all right. I question their ideas and challenge them so that they don't, as my daughters, they don't give into it's a comfortable place for them to bounce back to criticism. And I use criticism lightly because I wouldn't say I criticize, but I challenge and I fact check. We live in a very democratic household. Anytime they want to go to a concert, they want to get a dog or a puppy, I ask them to do a presentation. And through that, I teach them grit and I teach them the ability to bounce back. The third one is really to remain curious, keep learning, and kind of stay humble. When we think we know everything, we stop learning. And I found myself in that situation a couple of times over my career when I really mastered the art of what I was doing. But I can tell you it's not helpful, and eventually it will get you. So I will say that, given the environment we're in today with fast-paced innovation, we're really at the convergence of AI, data, and the next level of computing. So what that means is that we're in an accelerated phase of digital evolution, of financial evolution, of risk and security evolution. And keeping the learning hat on is absolutely imperative. I am learning something new every day. Most currently, I am obsessing over AI. And I'm using it I'm learning about it, and I'm using it as my co-pilot. I really start anything with a fresh or a clean piece of paper. It helps me draft my email, draft my keynotes. It helps me respond to my emails, summarize what sometimes land at my desk as like a chain of 50 emails. And so that's how AI is coming together as my personal assistant, and I'm learning how to use it for analytics, for outcomes or insights. But the second aspect is how AI is changing the way we at Visa detect and fraudulent transactions or map certain behaviors. And so that's the second piece I'm learning, is how AI is now being used to develop and enhance software, and Visa's been using AI for a long time, but generative AI, machine learning, and how it can really accelerate that recognition and that identification of a fraudulent transaction or a risky transaction is something that blows my mind. And the more I learn about its capabilities, the more I understand how it's working at the back end and how we can help our clients use those capabilities. And the third piece on AI, and I think it's really important whenever the world introduces a new technology, is the ethics around AI. There are times when I've gone to our internal ChatGPT and asked a question, and I find that there can be bias. AI is a language model that relies on what's already out there. And so we have to kind of put that lens of ethic, what is right, what is wrong. And so I think most organizations are thinking about, one, what they can do and how they can leverage AI, and two, how they can be ethical about that usage. And so that's one topic that I'm currently extremely interested in. And this lesson of learning is something that has shaped my leadership style as well. I encourage within my team and personally for myself, innovation and continuous growth. And so with that, I will move to my third point, I believe, or fourth point. And that is around having courage and taking the lead. I find that as women, we hold ourselves to a higher standard of accountability when we're looking at opportunities, when we're looking at roles, when we're setting out to our leaders our career aspirations. And this aligns with studies that tend to question that kind of look at women and how they approach a role that they're applying for and how men approach a role that they're applying for. And I don't think this will come as a surprise, but for most women, they feel like they need to have 100% of the requirements of the job description, whereas men will quite comfortably apply for a role if they believe they have 60% of the requirements of the job description. And another thing where men excel is kind of setting that career path and communicating those career aspirations to their leadership, whereas women kind of assume that their work will speak for itself. And so with that, I'm going to share my experience of how I got to this role at Visa, leading the risk team. And as Neil shared, I was in corporate or commercial banking at HSBC, which is very different from what I was doing here. What I'm doing here, I've had some card. Well, I've had extensive card experiences in from the issuing side, managing card portfolios or businesses, both retail and corporate. I've been in payments and cash management. I have some experience in global trade and finance, but really nothing mapped to the job description of this role, which was one in a payments network, which I'd never worked at. Two, it was a risk role. And while I have some experience in the past in credit risk, this wasn't really a credit risk role. It was a risk role as it relates to enterprise risk management, compliance, fraud risk. Fraud risk is probably the biggest piece of my role. And I had really zero experience. And as when I saw this role, the timing couldn't have been better. I was in that place in my life where I'd worked for traditional banks for over 12 years. And I really wanted to move into a digital environment. I wanted to move into an organization that was leading in digital. And Visa is exactly that organization. The second thing I was looking for is a role that would give me insights and kind of a connection into the various aspects of the organization. So when this role popped up, it was my jackpot role. And I was very, very aware that I had none of the requirements. So unlike men who look at 60%, I looked at 0% of the requirements. What I led with was my desire to take this role, for my desire to be here. And it was that inspiration and that aspiration that I led with through the interviewing process. I spent a lot of time studying how Visa thinks about security. I spent a lot of time studying how they manage, what products they have out there, how they think of interoperability at a global level, what secure technologies they have. I spent a lot of time studying what it would take for me to understand to do my job, but I still didn't have all the requisites. And as I went through the interviewing process, I was very honest about that. I was also very honest about the ecosystem and the environment which we were in, which was, and this was pre-COVID, where there was this dramatic shift to digital and online from what was previously mostly in person. And so one of my key comments was, listen, I have no experience, but the world at large does not also have the experience to combat fraud at the scale at which we're shifting to digital. And so with that education and really with that enthusiasm, I persevered to go through the interview process, and I was selected as a candidate. So, and that sounds like a pretty awesome story, but I will say that when I landed in the role, boy, oh boy, it was a challenge. I have never been on a learning curve that steep. And when you start a role ground zero, leading the team and being the face of Visa across clients, merchants, issuers, acquirers, processors, it is a very, very uncomfortable space if you are not the SME, because you are required to be the SME. And I spent the first 6 months in the role, spending all my spare time learning, speaking to people, reading articles, really learning the language of risk and fraud. And I think 2.5 years into the role, I couldn't be happier and I couldn't be more comfortable. I'm glad I took the chance. I'm glad I made the leap. So with that, I would say, if there is something out there that you feel really strongly about, that you're passionate about, take your chances. Just have the courage to take the leap. What's the worst that can happen, right? And then I'd go back to my previous point, have the grit to fail. It's not the first time I've applied for a role that I wasn't fully qualified for. And I've seen a few failures as well, and a few rejections as well. And I just kind of brush my knees off, I get up, and I continue, right? And I will share on courage and on kind of this emotion, a quote from Winston Churchill that kind of is something that I always keep at the back of my head. And that is that success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. So, if you fail, if you fall, that's fine. It's not final and it's not fatal. And your career and your life is a journey, and don't take any one point of that journey too seriously. Just keep on moving forward, have passion and persevere. And with that, I'm going to come to the most important aspect of a successful career. And that is to go ahead and afford yourself a man flu. The man flu is a running joke in my home. When my husband, when I have a cold or a flu, nothing stops, everything happens. I'm not even unwell, right? And I'm sure most of you can relate to that. But when my husband has a flu, he logs it in. He takes his downtime, and I tend with the soups and sorts. And so what I've learned from him over the years is to also take that downtime, to kind of, and I'm on a journey there. I'm a bit of an A-type and a control freak. So it takes a lot of learning and a lot of adjusting. So when I'm down or when I'm unwell or something is aching and breaking, I try not to keep on going. I am learning to let go. And I think as women, that is the most important lesson we have to learn. We have to make our partners true partners in everything we do. We have to divide and conquer. Over the years, I have had the privilege of a partner who's willing to shift and take on some of my responsibilities. I will say that often when he's doing the laundry or he's doing the dishes post dinner or making a meal, I have a lot of feedback real time. And so the other learning is to pull back on, just take it as it is. You don't have to it doesn't have to be your way for it to be okay. And so taking that help, not only from your partner, from your kids, assigning responsibility from your village. It takes a village to raise a family. It takes a village to be a successful woman. It takes a village to kind of do everything. Recognize who's in your village, and don't be embarrassed to take help and ask for help and take your downtime when things are not going extremely well. And with that, I will kind of close with saying that really the benefits of women leaders are clear and multifaceted, ranging from enhanced decision making and risk management to improve financial performance, and the promotion of true diversity. And as more women assume leadership roles and positions, organizations become more diverse, more inclusive, and more successful. The presence of leadership, women in leadership roles, is not just a matter of fairness and representation. It is a critical factor to the overall success and effectiveness of organizations. And that's how we should see it. Encouraging more women to take up leadership position involves both societal and specific initiatives within organization. And we must foster a culture that values diversity, inclusivity, and respect. And this is not just our responsibility. This is the responsibility of our entire ecosystem. And in that, I would once again like to thank Neil and Women in Security for pulling together forums like this, where we can come together, share our experiences, share our learnings, share our failures, and kind of encourage other women to take the leap, to be courageous, to have some grit, to fall weak and be vulnerable and ask for help sometimes. And so with that, I believe we may still have some time for Q&A.
Yes, we do have a few minutes for Q&A. So if anybody who's attending this conference has a question for Miriam, please use the Q&A tab and ask Miriam a question. So Miriam, we do have one question from the audience for you currently. Do you find that small and medium-sized enterprises are the largest sector at risk with data security, or is it everybody? Is it across the board?
Okay. That's a very, very good question. I will say that there are more vulnerabilities in terms of data security, cyber, across the smaller businesses. And that really has to do with what they can afford, right? In terms of cybersecurity, in terms of risk measures and protection measures. The larger organizations have larger budgets to kind of put towards that. And the role Visa plays is critical in these situations, because what we do is we try to level the playing field, and we don't look at just large organizations. We look at every single seller and buyer in our ecosystem. So everything we do, and that's where we put the dollars behind the investment that helps everyone, all the way from that micro merchant to the very large merchants. And so our secure technologies, whether that's token adoption, whether that's EMV standards, kind of are effective across all these organizations. It doesn't require a huge cost investment. It requires that you turn on those abilities for your small business or for your medium-sized business. The other thing is, when we invest on behalf of all sellers and all buyers. And over the past 5 years, Visa has invested $10 billion in exactly that, in ecosystem safety and security that protects the whole ecosystem, right? So we are that mechanism through which we level the playing field of security from smaller organization, from micro organizations to the very large organizations. Does that answer your question? I can elaborate if required. I can get pretty nerdy on some of this.
Hopefully that does answer the question. Yeah, that was an excellent response. So yeah, we'd like to thank you, of course, for for taking some time out of your very busy schedule to share your thoughts with us today. Really appreciate you speaking at our conference. So thank you.
You're most welcome.